You were really pissed off when the prosecutors showed an autopsy photo.
You've got victims in that courtroom, and they were shocked there was no warning. It's re-traumatizing to the family.
Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Mark Geragos here. But this week I'm going to call this one cranky old man and one very satisfied angry man. So how's that?
I think it's fair. First of all, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question about this because before we get into Menendez, I want to ask you something, but we should explain that the DA just lost a big hearing where he was trying to take the resentencing hearing off the table, and the judge rejected it. There was a lot of drama in the courtroom. I want to get to something before we get into Menendez, but I do want to ask you this. Do you see this as you winning or the DA losing?
Internally, I have told, there's a lot of people that are invested in this. The term right now is stakeholder. I have told everybody who will listen internally that to me, this was the ball game, and I don't want to overstate it, but I also don't want to downplay it. And what's the reason for that? If the DA had been successful, the reason they were fighting so hard was if the judge had allowed them to withdraw, they at that point, and what has happened right now is there is a presumption that unless they rebut it, that they're going to get resentenced. And that is, I was just explaining 2 years ago when we started, a little over 2 years ago, when I was talking to Cliff Gardner, who is the appellate lawyer who I partnered with on this. We talked about this and talked about what a long shot it was. And it just not only is now we finally got the presumption, 2 years of kind of hard work, it's created kind of almost a appellate petri dish. You've got the habeas is still alive, the governor is still alive in the clemency, and now we've got a presumption that they should be resentenced, and that goes to next week.
So that's a lot. And let me just, we've talked about this before, and I just want to make this, understand this. The resentencing itself would mean that they would take away without parole. So it wouldn't be life without the possibility. It would be something less than that. That would allow the parole board to hear the case. I know that one of the things you're going to do when you have this resentencing hearing is ask the judge not just to resentence, but to change the conviction from murder to manslaughter. They'd be free men instantly. So if you take that off the table for just a second, just play with me here. If you take that off the table and what they get is resentenced, it's already at the parole board because the governor's done it. So what I'm trying to figure out is the only thing that seems to matter right now is if you can convince the judge to change the conviction. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do. And I think, frankly, that's why they went. It was kind of crazy to me, at least in the courtroom today. They spent, mind you, the Menendez, as I call them, have been in custody for 35 years. They have one of the most exemplary files, what's called a C file. I assume that's for corrections, but they've got one of the most amazing ones anybody's ever seen. Behind me, Brock Lunsford is here. Brock is the guy who was exiled by Nathan Hochman even before Hochman took office. He was Nancy Thieberge, who was the other deputy DA who initiated the resentencing under Gascon, was literally kicked out of the office. Kathy Cady, who was representing Milton Anderson, who's no longer alive, was hired by Hochman as the victim services person. It was a unbelievable dog and pony show. I must have said it 4 times in the courtroom. What they were doing, they were fighting to call these guys liars, pants on fire, basically because the last thing the DA wanted was to have anything that suggested that they were sexually abused. Why does that matter? Because what reduces a murder to a manslaughter is negate malice. How do you negate malice? Imperfect self-defense. What two juries found when they hung, half of them fully, both juries found that they had acted in imperfect self-defense and voted for manslaughter. If that happens, the guys are out.
Yeah. By the way, we should say you're at the Van Nuys courthouse right now. Literally, this happened minutes ago that you won this, and there's a lot of commotion behind you. There's a lot of media there. You were really pissed off when the prosecutors showed an autopsy photo.
I'll tell you what happened. I've been in enough murder cases in my career, probably murder trials. I stopped counting after 50. One of the things that you know, both as a defense lawyer and as a prosecutor, the last thing you do if you are sensitive to the fact that you've got victims in that courtroom, and mind you, we didn't just have victims, we had virtually the entire extended family. Last thing you do is throw up a photo or a crime scene photo, and that's what happened. And they were shocked. There was no warning. And I don't think they were thinking, but it's re-traumatizing to the family.
So now that the judge has said to the prosecutors, sorry, this resentencing hearing is going to go forward, do you think there was any signal by the judge that, okay, we've already heard about the murders. We know about the murders. They were sentenced for the murders. What we should be talking about here is mitigation, or will they talk rehabilitation in court? What exactly is the judge going to consider in deciding whether to either resentence them or change the conviction?
That's why you're good at what you do, Harvey, because that was basically the argument today. They spent the entire morning from 10 till 12 something. They spent most of the afternoon. Not once did they talk about the 35 years or the 30 years in prison or the C files. In fact, they started off, as you might remember, on the motion to withdraw. All they wanted to talk about is, we did the hard work. I mean, Nathan Hochman with his hard work mantra, and anybody who was in the courtroom, and I said it, I was mocking him a little bit. He did so much hard work, he didn't even know how to read the C file. And by the way, they didn't even mention the C files because anybody who's done any kind of work like this understands that they were exemplary. So what do? They go back. They don't talk about the fact that after OJ, 8 days later, when the then DA in the 90s was in a fight for his political life because he couldn't win the big one, that they then shut it down. No cameras in the courtroom. Shut it down. We're going to pull the rug out from under you. You're not going to get an imperfect self-defense instruction. We need a conviction. We are in the fight of our political life. Fast forward 30 years later, when you said it was politics back then, it's politics again. It was just a astonishing thing to watch and see and have a front row seat on.
So, Nathan Hochman ran. By the way, I actually texted Nathan Hochman to come on this podcast to talk, and I never heard back from him. But we at least...
Shock. By the way, I said today, I don't know if you're aware of this, he was sitting in the front row, Hochman was, and watching his deputies give the very spirited argument that was basically nothing more than a rehash of Pam Bozanich, who was the prosecutor in trial number 1. David Kahn, who prosecuted in trial number 2, has passed away sadly as well. But it was a rehash of the YouTube clips of various people testifying. And then they said, look, they lied here, they lied there. But the idea was they were going to say that's a lack of insight. Insight isn't related to and is not in the statute. It was if they were doing some kind of kabuki theater, performative arts. I don't understand it. And,
what are they going to do? Because you're going to have a real resentencing hearing next week, next Thursday. what are they going to do? Is the judge going to shut them down if they try and retry the murder case? Is the judge going to say, talk to me just about the 35 years they've been behind bars? What's the play of the DA given what you saw with the judge today? What's going to happen next week? Can the prosecutors get into the evidence again in the case? Do they get, or do they have to limit it to the time behind bars?
Well, you would think that it would be the time behind bars. And why do I say that? It is clear to any sentient human being that the whole purpose of the resentencing statute, talk to anybody who does resentencing work, talk to anybody who enacted the statute. It is not designed there to rehash 35-year-old crimes. What it is designed to do is act as a safety valve and an incentive to inmates to do the right thing, which clearly they have done. And so rather than focus on that, I keep calling Hochman the 90s Neanderthal. It's almost as if he feels like his victory was some kind of a license to do a throwback to the 90s. The whole resentencing statute is a reaction to that. So he's walking this almost schizophrenic prosecutorial tightrope, and I don't know. I can't predict what they're going to do. I thought today was a failed strategy, and thank God the judge saw it the same way.
Have you talked to Eric and Lyle since the judge ruled?
I have not. I'm talking to you before I talk to Eric and Lyle.
I
It
appreciate
was tough enough to get them on the phone in between or on breaks. I mean, you should have seen what we were doing. And, they were on a Zoom from Donovan, and it's, there's technological challenges.
Mark, I am aware. I'm aware of that, right? We won't say anything more. Will they
just
test?
Say that Harvey, like a German Shepherd dog, has urinated in my yard.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that.
We'll
You're going to want to cut that out, and I'm going to.
No, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to actually leave that in. By the way, okay, I'm just going to admit it. It's true.
West Side guys. Yeah, you're one of those West Side guys. He had to go to the far reaches of La Cañada.
Yeah, when you invited me over there and nobody's home, right?
And so what did you do? Well, that's nobody's
I
home.
Pissed in your bushes because the drive was 2 hours. Okay.
Because
anyway.
You're one of those West Side guys.
Okay. So will they testify next week?
I haven't decided yet. I will tell you today, I always, and I think I've told you this before, and I think you probably have seen it in action. I talked about having Brock Lunsford here. Brock was the DA who has filed as recently, I think, as this week, Monday or Tuesday, a lawsuit against Hochman. He was the lawyer.
Right, who was removed from the case.
Who was removed from the case even before Hochman was sworn in. And I subpoenaed him. I had him here. I was going to put him on. But when I saw the presentation, and I told the DA this before, the DA's in the courtroom, I'm going to play it by ear. I want to see what you guys do. When I saw that they were not going to address the rehabilitation, the unbelievable file. I mean, let me tell you a couple of things that I mentioned in the courtroom that really struck me. I've been to Donovan State Prison. Lyle started a program called the Green Space Program.
Right.
You know about it.
Right.
The Green Space Program is a revamping of the common space there. Eric, who is an incredibly talented artist, painted the murals. I would walk up to the murals just because they're so real. They actually kind of are inviting. They've got a 3D quality to them. They are designing, and they've raised the money to do it. They are designing a space that helps people actually reacclimate. Because whether you want to warehouse people, which is what they used to say in the 90s, whether you want retribution, at some point, some figure of prisoners are going to be released. Well, when they get released, you want them to reacclimate. You don't want a revolving door. And that's what Lyle and Eric have been working on through hospice programs, through
suicide prevention.
Suicide prevention. You've talked to them, you know that.
No, I know. But look, here's the thing. I've spent some time talking to them. They are two very compelling men. So if this is about rehabilitation, it seems to me that you want the judge to hear them talk, where the judge can evaluate not just what they've done, but the passion behind it. What I understand also is they would then be subject to cross-examination. But if you could keep that door shut over whether you could retry the crime again, isn't it kind of a good bet to put him up?
Well, Judge Jessic, one of the great things about him, because as I was going crazy in there listening to this, what I called the dog and pony show, he's got enormous patience and he lets you try your case. I don't think or suspect that he's going to cut them off. I think he's going to let them try their case.
No. I don't. You mean the DA? You mean so the DA can then get into the murder again?
And by the way, if that happened, I think we would be here for a month.
So I'm not sure how that cuts. Does it cut against them testifying because you don't want them doing it? That's what I'm sensing.
I don't know. I mean, you're asking great questions. I haven't thought about it. It's Friday.
Oh, you just did that. You
night.
Clearly thought about it because you just said if the judge is going to allow it and there's going to be a month of testimony, it's as if it's Judge Weisberg, and I don't think you want that.
I just don't know. I mean, I think that right now, I don't know. And by the way, I've told you this before for trials. I never make a decision on whether to put the client on the stand until I've seen how everything goes. I know right now that I'm going to put family members on the stand. I know right now I'll put correctional officers on the stand. I know right now I may put behavioral scientists on the stand. But other than that, I haven't made a decision yet.
Are you going to put X the Rapper on the stand?
He's an interesting choice because if I understand correctly, he's lived with, been in a prison with Eric.
For 18 years.
Prison with
18 years.
Yeah, and with Sirhan,
right,
which is who the DA is fixated on. Although I always thought that was kind of a smoke screen and Nathan Hochman's little dig at Governor Newsom. I think that was taking Newsom's statement about Sirhan, which basically has nothing to do with the proceeding we're doing, and shoving it back at the governor.
Yeah.
I think there's some kind of a grudge match there in Hochman's head.
Well, there's a grudge match clearly between you and Hochman at this point. I mean, the gloves are off. So
he's done. He's. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Now I want to get into something else, and this is something that I've known not from you, Mark, but I've known it from other people. But I've told you about this over the last 3 or 4 weeks, because now it's seeping.
Are you going to start trafficking in rumors?
I'm not trafficking. I'm not trafficking in rumors. I'm trafficking in fact. I have been told for weeks now, and
by who?
I'm not going to tell you, but my source.
How can I tell you?
Okay, well, let me just.
Is there an angry man privilege?
Is
there an angry man?
No, this is a valid story.
Going?
This is a valid story, Mark.
Mark said, "I've got a valid story right now. I'm going to enjoy this."
No.
Friday.
You can't cut me off here, Mark. You cannot cut me off. I will do this alone on the.
Can I tell our listeners what you and I did before I got on camera? What did you do?
What do you mean? What did
You don't even remember. Give me that look.
No, I know you can't. You're diverting attention. I need. Okay, I want. Okay, you got to stop. You got to stop. You will not let me say this. You are going to represent Diddy, and I know it. And I've known this for 3 weeks, Mark.
I have represented Sean off and on for 15 years.
I know.
My daughter represents
I know
Sean.
That too.
I don't traffic in rumors.
This is not a rumor. I know your client is telling people, you're representing him in the trial.
Have you talked to the client?
I am Do you want
No.
to do you want to doubt me on this? Do you want to
Hearsay.
doubt? Do you want to doubt me on this?
Hearsay.
Do you want to doubt me on this?
My daughter, Mark Agnifilo, Alexander Shapiro, there is a very able trial
I
team
understand
there.
that. You want to? Do you want to deny what I know? You can just look. I'm telling you what I know. Do you want to say it's not so?
Have you talked to Sean Love Combs? Have you talked?
I'm not going to tell you who I talked to, but I know I'm right. I've talked to.
I mean, he tells me what I've got
Mark,
to say,
I'll bet.
but you
I will bet my house. My house.
haven't been to your house. You've been to my house.
That Sean Combs.
been to your
That
house.
Sean Combs.
Has anybody,
Sean Combs has told people you're representing him.
There isn't a single person here who's been to your house. What kind of a guy are you? What kind of boss are you? Nobody comes to your house. You've been to my house. I haven't been to your house.
Now, can everybody hear the deflection? Just everybody listen to the deflection here. You don't. Why don't you want to talk to me about this?
Workplace. I mean, 15 years. 15 years. How long? 6 months? How about you? No.
Oh my God.
4 years. Never been to his house.
Oh my God.
15 years. Never been to your house. 13 years. Ever been to his house? 13 years. Never been to the house. We got 28 and 4, 32. 32 years, almost as long as the Menendez have been in custody, and none of your guys have been to your house. Harvey, what kind of boss? You're like, I mean, I've got a friend I'm going to refer them to that'll keep you in line.
Okay.
Anyway.
Now you want to talk about Sean Combs?
No, I don't.
Of course you don't, because you've been working on this case for weeks and weeks and weeks, Mark.
I've been working on the Menendez for 2.5 years.
I know,
So,
but
Harvey,
you're able to multitask, and we know that. Oh my God,
can't.
you're leaving me, and you won't talk about this.
I am leaving you.
Oh
but
my
I love
God!
You. I
And
love you.
and
by
you
the way,
had to
guys,
tell people I pissed in your bushes.
I'll take it on a contingency.
Oh my God!
Got it. Bye, Harvey.
Oh God! Unbelievable! Unbelievable! See you, Mark.
See you, Harvey. I love you.